This equipment was worn by firefighter Lathy Workus of the Elizabeth, New Jersey Fire Department when he was caught in a flashover searching for a woman reportedly trapped in a bedroom. The equipment he wore exceeded the minimum specifications of his department. Elizabeth Fire Director Jay Flanagan.
Firefighter Workus always made sure he had the best possible protective gear whenever he rode to a fire. Hopefully, this video will make you more aware of fire safety and understand the limitations of protective gear.
The bedroom of this 2.5-story frame house became a living inferno for firefighter Workus because of a man upset with his mother for cleaning his room. Workus was 29 years of age at the date of the incident and an 8-year veteran of the fire service. He was assigned to the rescue squad for the last 5 years.
Central News at 1637, we transfer to station 2645. Report of a house fire at 959 Lafayette Street. Report of a house fire at 959 Lafayette Street. Cross Street is read. Responding company is 31 and 7, ladders 3 and 2, rescue. Acknowledge rescue. Rescue when received and responding.
Workus invested about $850 of his own money in firefighter protective clothing. Although he would sometimes complain about the amount of time it takes him to put on all of his gear, he would soon be very grateful that he made the investment. Deputy Chief Lewis Kelly and Battalion Chief David Lechner arrived simultaneously at the scene, reported a working fire, and ordered the first due engine company to bring in its own supply line. The first due engine company that day had 3 firefighters, a captain, driver, and rider. Workus was unaware of the undermanned engine company because the unit was on the road during roll call. If it was a 4-man company, a nozzle man would have been in the building with firefighter Workus. But because there were only 3 men, the nozzle man was left at the hydrant to do the hookup. The objective of a rescue squad is to search the entire building for occupants, and then to go into a firefighting operation.
Got fire in the 2nd floor front room in 1 3/4 inch.
The engine company began to drop its feed down the street, and then the unexpected happened.
My mother's trapped the stairs on the 2nd floor!
Okay.
Firefighter Workus donned his facepiece and pulled up his hood as he ascended the stairs.
We got something up in the front room here.
You got a woman trapped up in that front room!
Come on.
Accompanied by firefighter Brian Santos, firefighter Workus made the decision to initiate a rescue. Although in a heavy smoke condition, there was minimal heat off the floor. He looked into the room and observed the bed fully involved with the flames rolling onto the ceiling, and entered. Firefighter Workus thought he could make a quick sweep of the floor area. But because of the heavy smoke condition, he wasn't aware of a staircase directly across from the fire room. All the superheated gases were escaping and being stored at the top of the stairway. The heat line was 2.5 feet off the floor. This allowed him to enter the room, but when he reached the end of the bed, he felt his hands beginning to burn and heard his partner, firefighter Santos, screaming, "Back out!" In the split second it took him to turn his head, the room burst into flames. Flashover had occurred. Although his partner was thrown from the room behind the safety of the wall, Workus was suddenly surrounded by fire. He crawled to what he thought was the doorway. It was the closet. Thinking the flashover blew the door shut, workers tried a side window, but it was blocked by an air conditioner. Panic-stricken, he dove across the room to where he thought the front windows were, but hit the wall and fell back onto the floor. Workus was coming to terms with death when the fire suddenly lifted, searching for air. Sensing his last chance, he desperately dove into the fire and, fortunately, through the window to safety.
As I dove out of the window, I landed on the porch roof, where I was grabbed by a member from the truck company because I almost rolled off the edge. I remember the smoke coming off my turnout gear and the severe pain in my hands. And the guy reached over and ripped off my face piece, and I started begging him to put water on my hands. They were burning so bad. He called down for an 1 3/4 line, and it was handed up to him, and he began putting water on my hands and putting out my burning turnout gear. It was at that time that I became a little bit hysterical because of the pain and because I could see that my turnout gear was pretty well burnt off me.
Firefighter Workus tried to use the ladder, but couldn't because of his hands. Two of his colleagues grabbed him, brought him out to the sidewalk, and began treating him for his burns.
That moment was pretty intense. The pain was absolutely unbelievable, and I couldn't believe the ordeal that I had just gone through, and I couldn't actually believe that I had gotten out of the room alive. As I was being treated, the pain was so severe. I kept asking to go to the burn unit at St. Barnabas, and as they transported me into the ambulance, they thought it'd be best that I be taken to a local hospital, one of the city hospitals, for immediate treatment, and then be transferred to the burn unit at a later time.
Shortly after Lathy was admitted to this local hospital, he was visited by his friend and colleague Mike Roberts of the Millburn Fire Department.
When I first walked in the room, I couldn't talk. I just got choked up, and I couldn't say anything for a couple of minutes. We asked to see what his hands looked like, because at the time they were only soaking in a solution next to his, next to him, and he's just laying there in obvious tremendous amount of pain. So I told him, you got to be in a burn unit. This is ridiculous. You don't belong here.
Workus was transferred to the St. Barnabas Burn Unit the following day. Created in 1977, the clinical chief burn surgeon is Dr. E. Hani Mansour.
When we are assessing the severity of burns, not only we take into consideration the depth of the burn, if it's a 2nd degree or 3rd degree burn, but we take into consideration the extent of the burn, how much of the total body surface area is involved by the burn injuries, and also the location of the burns. Burns that are above 20%, burns that involve the face, the hands, the genitalia, or the feet, required to be in a burn unit because it's a much more extensive treatment.
Although Workus was in the fire room for less than 30 seconds, he was in the burn center for almost 3 weeks.
He, if I remember, had burns of the face, the upper chest, both hands, and he had also a burn on his left thigh, which was from a piece of metal that he had in his pants that overheated and burned him on the thigh. The worst burns that he had were on the hands. He had very deep burns, especially on the dorsum of both hands, which were 3rd degree burn and eventually required skin grafting. The 3rd degree burn has absolutely no skin structures left in it, and in order for it to heal, it requires some seeding. It requires some import of skin structures from other parts of the body in order for it to heal.
The skin consists of 2 measured layers. The outer layer of the skin is called the epidermis. If the burn involves only the epidermis, it is a 1st degree burn. Although painful, this superficial burn usually heals in a few days. If the epidermis is totally destroyed and the burn is down to the next layer of skin, the dermis, then this is a 2nd degree or partial thickness burn. Although extremely painful, this type of burn will eventually heal on its own. If the burn destroys both the epidermis and dermis, then this is a 3rd degree or full thickness burn. A 3rd degree burn measures only 1/32 of an inch, but totally destroys nerve endings, sweat glands, and hair follicles. Skin grafting is a necessity. Burns of more than 20% total body surface area will usually cause the victim to go into burn shock, which also causes body swelling. Firefighter Roberts.
We took the towels off to look at his hands, and it literally looked like somebody took a rubber glove and blew it up. His hands had to be at least twice the size that they should have been. And I couldn't talk after that. I just didn't know what to say. I mean, I thought he was going to lose him. And he's telling me, well, they don't know how serious it is, maybe a week or two. And I'm like, you're going to lose your hands. I didn't want to say that, and I've never seen anything like it. Two of his fingers, I couldn't even tell where the fingers started. It was that swollen.
Every day, Lathy was taken to the hydrotherapy room, which is the treatment room. This is where his burn wounds were scrubbed, loose or dead skin removed, and dressing changes made. The hydrotherapy treatment is very painful, and the usage of water can cause the patient to become cool and lose body temperature. Patients are thus placed under a heat shield, which creates a heated microenvironment to retain body temperature.
Usually we keep the patient in the burn intensive care unit for about 2 to 3 weeks. After that, they are transferred to what we call a step-down unit, where the nursing care is still the same. We still have burn-trained nurses taking care of them, but it does not have all the sophistication that an intensive care unit has.
Lathy spent another 2 weeks in the step-down unit. Burn technician Paul Kastner attended him.
I first started to work with Lathy when he was transferred from the burn unit up to the step-down unit on the 4th floor. I would see Lathy on a daily basis when he would come to have his daily wound maintenance done. We would remove his bandages by wetting them. We would at first assist him in washing his hands and other areas of his body that were burned. Later we would allow him to do it himself.
When the patient's condition improves, he is encouraged to do his own washing. The objective is to return the patient to his own daily routines and restore self-independence. In Lathy's case, he had to scrub his own hands.
From us, in the beginning, doing the treatments, slowly but surely, Lathy gained a sense that he could do it himself.
This is very important for the patient to rely on himself, to feel that he's getting back into normal, but at the same time, if he doesn't overcome the fear of pain, he will get worse.
Lathy required large amounts of medication for him to tolerate these procedures. But after about a week of working with Lathy, the staff on the floor where he was staying began to notice that he was asking for enormous amounts of medication to help quell the pain that he was experiencing.
He was just in such agony constantly. It's not like you put ice on your finger and it feels better and it bothers you for a day or two. He was in constant agony all the time.
And he was utilizing the large amounts of morphine to try and help him forget the pain of that trauma.
People would come in to visit, and we'd just like stand out in the hallway. You know, you just shook your head.
But also I suggested to Lathy that maybe it was time at this point that instead of internalizing this trauma, that maybe he begin to share it a little bit. It was real important for Lathy to regain control over what was happening in his small environment that he was in.
Each time I saw him, something different had been done. You know, they took all the dead skin off the first time. And he was just about in tears telling me. And I was equally just about in tears listening.
We were hoping that the burns of Lathy will heal on their own, although they were deep second degree. We had hope that they will heal on their own. So we treated him for a long time. We treated him for about 2 weeks conservatively without having to take him to surgery. But we reached a level after 2 weeks when we realized that these burns are not going to heal on their own, and that if we continue to just treat him conservatively, he might have some loss of function in his hands.
They decided to do skin graft surgery. That in itself was extremely painful. The next morning when I actually came out from under the medication they had given me, it felt like somebody had parked a truck on my hands and then just walked away. I can't believe the amount of pain that this whole process involved.
Whenever the skin graft is removed, usually from the thigh, the donor site becomes the equivalent of a second-degree burn. The sheets of skin removed through grafting are about 1/1000th of an inch. Sometimes, with severely burned patients, pig skin or cadaver skin is used as a temporary covering to reduce the risk of infection. This is due to the lack of donor sites on victims with over 60% deep burns. The skin is serrated in a device which spreads it out to 3 to 4 times its natural size and placed over the buffed down burn area. But despite the effectiveness of skin grafting, the burned area is never like it was before, and rehabilitation is, at best, strenuous. Dr. Mansour.
It is a very stressful injury. Not only the healing takes a long time, it takes them weeks for them to have their skin closed, but the healing process takes about a year, 2 years for the scar to mature. And during that time, the patient has to go through continuous physical therapy, continuous stretching of his scars to maintain function. After that, we have to deal with the disfigurement. We have to deal with the scars, the deformity of the face, the deformity of the hand. Then they have to go through reconstructive surgery, again, more painful procedures, more painful physical therapy. It's a very long, very hard process.
The care that I received while I was at St. Barnabas Hospital was extremely painful, but the care was excellent. The major pain came from when they had to scrape the dead skin off of my hand, and that went on every morning for 19 days. Today, I can use my hands, although the fingertips where they had been burnt off came back, but it's a lot of scar tissue. They're very hard, and in the cold weather, I have a very difficult time with them. And also the fingernails themselves did grow back, but they are not like they used to be. They're a different shape, so I do get some pain out of them.
If it wasn't for the protective clothing Lathy was wearing, his burn injuries would have been much worse, and in all probability, fatal. Firefighter Roberts.
As a result of his injuries, we had Lathy come talk to us at one of our local meetings, and our chief was there, and since then we've been working out details to go for a capital budget for improved firefighting gear like bunker pants. Most firemen wear the hip boots, and Lathy had the bunker pants on at the time, so our department is now purchasing those bunker pants. We already purchased the better rated gloves on a departmental basis, and we also wear the Nomex hoods. So I guess we're ahead of a lot of people in that area. But because of Lathy's injuries, we're buying the pants now, which will be mandatory use.
Workus was the first in his department to purchase bib-style bunker pants. The chest-high bib-type overall is a Nomex garment with a Gore-Tex lining. It saved his legs from burns, but a foldable spanner wrench in his pocket created enough radiant heat to give him a second-degree burn on his left leg. Workus also suffered a puncture wound from the broken glass of the window he dove through. Workus wore a leather fire boot with a Gore-Tex and Kevlar lining, steel shank, and steel toe. A rubber boot would not have provided as much protection. Workus also wore a Nomex 2-ply undershirt, which is similar to a sweatshirt. This garment was charred at the bottom and had heat marks throughout, but was otherwise undamaged. Fire burned through the first layer of the hood and partially melted the plastic strap that holds the facepiece to the SCBA. The outer shell of Workus' short turnout coat was destroyed, except where the air tank ran down his back. The inner shell had numerous heat marks, but remained intact. The only city-issued item worn by Workus was his leather helmet. The ear flaps were not pulled down because Workus wears a hood. The inside of the helmet was undamaged, but the flipped-down plastic eye shields folded back over the top of the helmet. The self-contained breathing apparatus continued to function in the tremendous heat, but the harness straps were almost burnt off. It is estimated that Workus had no more than 10 seconds before the straps failed. Upgrade kits are now available with harness straps made out of Kevlar or Nomex and stainless steel core strapping. The gauges of the fiberglass tank melted over, and all the hoses were destroyed from temperatures reaching 3,400 degrees Fahrenheit. The facepiece bubbled and began turning to molten plastic, but did not fail. The gloves worn by Workus were leather and OSHA approved. Workers usually wore a better quality glove, featuring a Gore-Tex, Kevlar, and aluminum lining, but they were wet that day, so he wore his spare set. Workers contends that OSHA requirements are not stringent enough. But there are fire personnel who believe that too much protective clothing can be a hazard in itself. Elizabeth Deputy Chief Lewis Kelly.
What we're doing is we're taking a firefighter and we're encapsulating him in protective equipment to the point that he's losing the sense of feeling. And we can't continue to do this and allow firefighters to enter a hostile environment without a sense of feeling, without them being able to know that the environment around them is beginning to change.
Chief Kelly believes that a firefighter should always know what part of his equipment is the weakest link, and to what extent that equipment would protect him in the event of a flashover.
Burn injuries are the worst that a human being can sustain.
Because you can always rebuild a building, it's harder to rebuild a person.
I sat at his bed, and there are just times when we just looked at each other and communicated that way.
The incident itself was extremely scary. I'm just glad that I was able to survive it, and I believe I was able to survive it due to my turnout gear, which was superior, and to the excellent training that I had during my time in the fire service.